Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran jazz keyboardist and composer Dan Siegel on the 2024 album called Unity. We get into his 23rd release as a leader on this new project. He always covers a broad swath of the jazz spectrum over the course of this 4.5-decade career that he's had. From straight-ahead swing to sleek contemporary sounds, this new album reunites him with drummer Oscar Seaton for the first time in 20 years and his first meeting with David DJ Ginyard, Seaton's rhythm section partner, and Terence Blanchard's electrically charged E-Collective band. It's a great talk about this project and so much more. Enjoy.
Well, I'm glad you're squeezing a little time. I'm looking forward to getting into Unity, so thank you for taking a minute of that. I appreciate it.
Sure. No, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, for sure. So when's the last time we caught up? I'm trying to remember exactly.
You know, your memory is probably about as good as mine. I know it's been a couple of years, I guess. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's definitely been a while. So I want to know, with Unity, talk to me a little bit about how this project came about. I've really enjoyed listening to it. How did it begin and kind of come to fruition with the players and the vision that you had?
Well, it's kind of an amusing story, at least for me, because I've started writing, and, you know, it's like writing is like you start with a blank canvas, and you don't really know where everything's going, and I just kept writing, and when the inspiration hit, you know, something would happen, but it took me, as usual, about a year to compile. I guess it was like 10 songs that I didn't hate so much, and then it was like, you know, you kind of sit back and go, what is this stuff, you know? And then after the music was written, it was sort of like, you know, okay, who would be the best guys to use? And I had been listening to an old record that I did, I guess we recorded it in 2003, and the drummer Oscar Seaton played on that record, and I was listening to it and I went, man, he's such a great player, you know, I should call him. And so the reason I hadn't called him for 20 years was that after we did that project, apparently I'd called him for a gig, you know, a local gig in town, and he didn't show up for the gig. And, you know, I called him, and he was like really, you know, in a state of, he was just bummed out because his girlfriend had just dumped him or something. And so I said, hey, Oscar, man, you know, you got to get over to this gig, you know, we're supposed to start. And he's like, no, man, I'm too bummed, I'm not coming, you know. And so it really bummed me out. He finally did show up an hour and a half late, and of course, that club owner never forgave me. But so I didn't call Oscar for about 20 years. And I thought, you know, he plays so good, I got to call him. And so I called him, and you know, he was cool, and he's such a great player. And he brought along this the bass player. He said, I think this guy would be really good for this project. And a guy named David Ginyard, and they play together, and who is it? Just the name escapes me. In a group, Terence Blanchard and the electric band, and so the three of us went in and we hit it. And you know, it's a funny thing with Oscar, because I sent the music to him like a month before, and I was kind of like, you know, what do you think we should do with this tune, Oscar? And he goes, well, I got to be honest. He goes, I never listen to the music before I get into the studio, so I just react to it when I first hear it in the studio. And I thought, man, that takes a lot of guts and talent to be able to do that, because I always like to kind of know what I'm getting into and listen to stuff ahead of time. And so he's just a fabulous musician, and that was kind of how it all started. From that point on, you know, then it was like, okay, who's going to play guitar? Who's going to, you know, fill out the rhythm section? And I just kind of went down the list of some of the guys I'd worked with over the years, and you know, they're all great guys, LA studio guys, and most of them are, you know, they have their own bands and they're out there playing, and so I mean, it was just really just an act of kind of serendipity and just fun to work with some of these guys that I hadn't worked with for many years, and everybody made such an important contribution. You know, I just got to tell you, it's a lot of fun to make music like that, the old-fashioned way, where you get together with musicians and you play, and it's an important aspect, I think, of especially music where there's a pretty big improvisational part of the total arrangement, in that, because people react with each other, and it's kind of become the new thing where a lot of people just do overdubs and send me the tracks, and of course we did it that way a little bit, but most of it was kind of tracked where we're playing together, and it just has a very nice feel to it.
So this album is your 23rd, and I'm curious, how do you see each successive release? You're deep into your career with these releases. On each successive one, do you learn something new about yourself that you take into the next one? Is it a snapshot in time? How do you compartmentalize each new release?
Yeah, that's a good question, an interesting question. I've always thought it's sort of like a snapshot in time, wherever you're at. And, it's kind of, I'm getting old, right? It's like, when we finished the last session for this record, where I did horn section, I kind of looked around and said, man, I've been doing this a while, and it's still no less fun than it was the first time. I've learned a hell of a lot, but for some reason I'm still learning. There are certain things that, if I listen back to this, as every record, I'll listen and I'll go, why did I do that? It's like I could have made a different musical decision. And I guess that's it. When you finally learned it all and you feel content, I guess it's time to go. And I'm not quite there yet, though. It's sort of making a record it's like cathartic in that you kind of give it all that you've got, and for like a month or 2 months I didn't go near a piano, I didn't sit down, I didn't think about music, I just was kind of like spent. There's nothing left to give, and that's kind of how it is, I guess. And I'm starting to think like, okay, well, when we finished that session, it's been now like 6 months or something. We've done a couple gigs sort of on the West Coast here, and, it's kind of sort of like, okay, do I have any ideas? And I'm at the point where I don't need to make records, but I do, because, if you've got something to say, and if there's an idea that you want to explore, then, you do it. But in the old days, it was like you were tied to a record contract that said you've got to turn in a record, 9 months, 12 months after you've delivered the previous one. It was sort of like you were forced to kind of be on that conveyor belt. And I don't think I could do it very well anymore. I'm too, I don't have to, in that, it's like, and you can't force it. You just can't. You can't write something that of value. It seems like if you're just forced to do it, it has to come naturally.
So the one thing too is that this album, you kind of build this alchemical process of pulling all these musicians in, and a lot of these musicians have played with a deep spectrum of people, from Steely Dan to Chick Corea, Whitney Houston, all the way down the line. Do you ever think, when you're assembling your cast of people that are both have had experience in jazz and other realms, that they're going to bring in these elements that's going to really make this audio soup of what you want, and it's going to just enrich the process?
I've never been a jazz purist. I was maybe when I was in my early 20s, and playing bebop, and that was it. That was the only music that I wanted to play and explore. And then eventually I kind of just changed, and then I realized that, God, the greatest bebop players have already come and gone. Who needs another one to, play the same stuff over and over? And I just kind of let the music, because my background is sort of varied, I let the music just be what it's going to be. And that's also reflected in the guys that I like to work with. I'd say that any of these guys, you could throw, giant steps in front of them and they wouldn't embarrass themselves. They know how to get through this stuff. They can play jazz, right? But they play other things as well. And that interests me. That, to me, is more, I don't know, it's more natural in a sense. I know plenty of jazz purists and that whole thing. I guess I'm not one of those people. I was, however many decades ago that was. But at this point, what interests me is kind of a mixing up, different styles, people that come from different genres. And I'd say when it comes to guitar, most of the guys have played in pop R&B settings, but they play jazz too. And I think that makes it a little more interesting. Even when we were cutting tracks and there was one tune in particular that I was like, I think this is a Latin tune. I think we should play it as a Latin tune. And Oscar and DJ were sitting there looking at me, and they said, wow, that's weird. We heard it as a shuffle. And I said, I never heard it as a shuffle. Let's try it as a shuffle, And so we played it as a shuffle, and I went, that feels a lot better than what I had in mind, So we made it a shuffle. And, people that have a varied background hear different things, and that's what makes they bring something cool to the party, and as opposed to just the tried and true, and it might be right up the middle. And so people that have a varied background musically that's always interested me. And coming from that time period in the early '80s, where I started playing this kind of music in the late '70s, and it's that kind of a dirty word at this point to say, like, yeah, it's fusion, jazz fusion, and whatever that is. We kind of have an idea of what it sounds like, but that was where people just started mixing it up a little bit, and it was a kind of a fun time. There was a lot of interesting music that was made at that time, and of course now everything's watered down. Genres are cross over each other, and it's hard to tell where one genre starts and the other one picks up sometimes. And there's a lot of interesting music out there, if you take the time to explore it.
So what are you doing for promotion, getting this out? How is that all materializing?
Well, my philosophy is I never say no if a promoter calls me and offers me, hardly any money. I'll usually say yes, and I'll go out and get the guys to go out and do gigs. It's just so I mean that's the first thing. And again, we played in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of weeks before that we played out on the Catalina Island Jazz Festival, which is 20 miles west down into the ocean on Catalina Island here on the West Coast. And I was trying to put together some things, and as you get closer to the holidays, everything kind of shuts down. It's been booked for a long time, so there might be some opportunities to get out there and play in the first of the year to help promote the record. It's like one of the radio promoter guys just sent me a text yesterday, and apparently on this service that he used, the record was the number one most downloaded. So it's still out there, it's still getting worked, and it's funny because the title of the record is Unity, and we tried to always avoid talking politics with people we don't know too well, but he was just saying, hey, this is now what we need more than ever, and I reluctantly agreed. But so yeah, I feel as maybe it's the right time for at least the title sort of fits our times. It
certainly does, man. So if anyone wants to properly pick up a copy of Unity, any of your other work that would benefit you in the best way? Where's the best place to go? And anything in your world, where can people go? Where's the best place?
It's all the usual places. I teach a class in music business, and we talk about the different services that are out there, and of course, we all have our favorites, and whatever your subscription is, wherever you pay your money, your $10 or $11 a month, to get music. But of all the services, Apple is, believe it or not, the most benevolent toward the musicians at this point. So even though I have a Spotify account, I think my wife has an Apple account, and so we, kind of try to do our best to support those services, because that's kind of the way of the world these days, I guess, right?
Yeah, certainly is. Man, it's great to catch up. I think the last time I just fact checked was 2021, so it's great to see that the momentum is moving forward. It's always great to catch up. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season, man. I appreciate it.
Well, same to you, Joe, and thanks for the opportunity, and maybe we'll talk in another 3 years.
I love it, man. Let's do it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in LA, New York City, Kansas City, Canada, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Dan for swinging on by the show. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.